Well, let's get to our first discussion today. The Nigerian Governors Forum has green-lighted the tax reform bills of President Bola Tinubu for passage by the National Assembly. The governors made their decision known in a statement issued at the end of a meeting with the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, in Abuja on Thursday, January 16, 2024. Recall some governors had raised concerns over certain provisions in the four-part bills, especially the proposed sharing formula for value-added tax. Most of the complaints had been from the north, as political and religious leaders in the region alleged systematic alienation from the nation's resources, calling on the president to withdraw the bills following the outcry. The National Assembly halted further action on the passage of the bill to allow for wider consultations with stakeholders. Well, let's talk to Ugochi Ndebio. She's an associate director and lead regulatory business solutions. She's with PricewaterhouseCoopers to look at some issues raised with regards to this bill. Good afternoon, Ugochi. It's good to have you join the program.
Good afternoon, Tolu. It's great to be back again.
Yes, Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
Yeah, well, finally the governors have given a nod to this, particularly harping on the issue of VAT sharing formula. How does this come to you in your understanding of the positives that this bill, of course, has for Nigerians?
Okay, so we'll look and start on the good notes to say that it's a good thing that we have reached some form of consensus around moving forward, because the issue of VAT sharing is only a small aspect of the entire reforms that is sought to be achieved through this total overhaul of the Nigerian tax system. So it's a good thing that at least the governors that have created the most uproar have finally reached some kind of, they've come to some kind of solution as to how they think it can move forward. So that's a good thing that we're moving forward. And hopefully we can see the end of the entire tax reforms. So taking away from the changes that they're looking at, which I'm sure we're going to cover here, it's a good thing that we're able to hopefully, now the National Assembly can continue up to final reading and, subject to modifications, pass the entire four bills that are currently under, debates at the National Assembly.
So okay, that's just a part of it. Well, I totally also agree with you. But looking at the basics of all the arguments, saying right now we have 50%, that's the proposed equitable sharing formula for VAT. We have 50% based on equality, 30% based on derivation, and 20% based on population. Can you make us understand how this would maybe address some of these challenges that was raised before now?
Okay, let's take a step back to where we were before all of this started.
Yeah.
So in the current VAT Act, what we currently have is, okay, we'll start from first how it's being shared between the federal, the states, and the local government. So the federal government takes 15%, states take 50%, and the local government take 35%. Now, within the 50% that is taken by the states, 20% was what was supposed to be taken, shared to the different states based on derivation. Before now, based on the practice, you had 50% on equality and 30% based on population. That's the current. The tax reform proposed the move to 60% based on derivation. They didn't say anything as to how the population and equality will be split. But however, based on conversations and the forums that the Presidential Committee has had, they said the rest is just to try and buffer the impact that the derivation may have on the states that are not doing a lot of economic activity. Now, the reason for the move is really a case of we're trying to have a fair tax system, and moving to derivation, it only creates a fairer tax system where you have the states that have bigger economic activities based on consumption, not based on collection, based on consumption, get to take a lion's share of the VAT. And it's only fair. If I'm going to generate the economic activity and the consumption that is going to lead to this revenue, I should also get a fair amount of it. Makes rational sense. However, what we have seen is that the governors have said, no, that this is not fair to the economically disadvantaged states. Now, again, part of it was to say, if you're not doing well in terms of economic activities, what's going to incentivize you to do more? Based on what we currently have, you're collecting 80% of the VAT share for doing absolutely nothing, simply based on equality and population. 20% only goes to derivation. It doesn't make sense. Think about it. If somebody is going to pay me 80% of my salary for doing absolutely nothing, I wouldn't work. So there is no incentive to make the states that are not doing much in terms of economic activity to do a lot more. Unfortunately, where we are right now is just a small shift in the trajectory, because what we've moved from is 20% derivation to where it presently is to 30% derivation. And we still have 50% based on equality. So the only thing that has changed is in terms of the percentage that was awarded based on population. So population now gets 70%. So essentially what the governors are proposing is that every state, no matter the economic activity I have, I get 70%. 70% is guaranteed for me simply because I'm a state in Nigeria and I have, if I have a large population, I also get higher. So that's where we are right now. And it's unfortunate because this is looking at things through a very narrow lens and not looking at the overall implication of this for Nigeria as a nation and even moving forward. Now, moving forward in the terms of the fact that, okay, I think we'll probably get to the fact that they also don't want the VAT rates to be increased.
Yeah,
that's another thing altogether. But just looking at in terms of the derivation formula and how the revenue for VAT is going to be shared, not a lot has changed. And the needle has moved a bit. So you can say, yeah, we made some progress, but not a lot to cause any change.
Interesting stuff. I also saw that no increase for now with VAT and, of course, reduction in corporate income tax to help achieve economic stability and all of that. We also have that there will be no terminal clause for TET Fund, NASENI, and NIPDA in the sharing development levy of this. But can you give us a balanced view of the benefits of this bill? Because I think Nigerians need to really understand this. And of course, if there are costs, how do we assess them? And just highlight some of these benefits for us so that we get to understand it better.
Okay, all right. So the bill essentially tends to, from a very holistic perspective, tries to consolidate the Nigerian tax laws. So before you have the different tax laws hitting the CIT, the VAT, the CGT, stamp duties, and some of these laws like the stamp duties haven't been overhauled since inception in 1939. So all this, what the bill tried to do is to modernize our Nigerian tax laws, consolidate them, bring them all together so that you don't have, different bills speaking to almost the same thing, but something like penalties. I am not paying CIT, I have a different rate in terms of what penalty I'm going to pay from, say, for example, a VAT. Just try to harmonize all our tax bills. Also try to define in terms of the role of the FRS, in terms of collection of revenue for the Federation as a whole. Coming up with, other provisions that will stimulate economic activity, provide a bit of certainty, streamline some of these additional, taxes, because we keep talking about the fact that Nigeria has layers of multiple taxation. We've been singing this for years. What it also tries to do is consolidate some of those multiple points of taxation into just the development levy, and then, then have all other, in terms of there are several other provisions, that seek to also modernize the Nigerian tax system. I mean, if I'm supposed to talk about this, the time we have is not going to be enough. But this is essentially what the tax bills, seek to do. So looking at this, the tiny thing that has been the bone of contention all this while is just a small portion of it. But again, even you're looking at in terms of the fact that they say VAT should not be increased. We have, our budget is currently before the National Assembly. part of the means of funding this budget was supposed to come from the VAT that's increased. So now we have said, oh, don't increase VAT, leave TIT the way it is. As it is presently, we make more from VAT than from CIT on non-oil and gas. So if you take away oil and gas CIT and then the PPT, we generate more from VAT. And that is a constant amongst, across different countries. That is why there's a focus on indirect taxation. We are a country that is in deficit. Our finances are in deficit. If you say, don't increase VAT. Now, it's easy to look at it from a common man and say, oh, I'm not going to, it's good, I'm not going to pay more. But the reality is that the common man, in terms of the impact of this increased VAT, is actually not a lot. Because food items are exempt from VAT. The diesel, the petrol is all exempt from VAT. So by right, and then having the input and output system, by right, the impact on the common man, on the downtrodden in our society is supposed to be minimal. The people that are supposed to be, paying the higher VAT are the people who are the higher income earners, who have a lot more disposable cash and can buy products that are subject and liable to VAT. So we then say, oh, don't increase that VAT. What happens? How are we going to fund that deficit? Are we going to continue borrowing as a country? So honestly, I think sometimes when we do certain things, we don't look at things end to end. Because we try to say, oh, let's fix this temporary issue, but we're not looking at it in the long haul.
So before I let you go, also the continuous exemption of essential goods, agricultural produce, and all of that is safeguarded for the welfare of the people. What is your outlook at the end of the day? The Taiwo Edele Committee has done a lot of work. Many have commended that committee, but this back and forth with regards to the approval of this document is what has been topical for some time now. Now that we've gotten to this point, what do you think is your outlook, the impact on the budget, which you also mentioned, moving forward in 2025? Government has a lot of funds to raise from the non-oil space, and we all know that.
Yeah, so that's correct. In terms of outlook, hopefully, because before now, they were hoping to pass the bill before the end of Q1 of this year. Now, the reality is that, even businesses, everything is it's also on the hold, because they're like, okay, is this going through? What are the changes that are going to be made? Is it going, there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's good that we can put this to bed. Let's put this to bed. We're not saying that the bill is perfect. The bills are perfect. The bills are actually not perfect. There are a few things in there that are not necessarily very business friendly. But let's pack it. The reality is that we cannot get to our destination in one day. We can continue to make, with the Finance Act, after all, what we keep doing with Finance Act is to try and, where we see things that need to be changed, we make those corrections. So I'm not trying to say that the bills as it is perfect, but let's even get to the end. Let's pass it. When we pass it, then we then think about how is it helping the society? How is it really stimulating the economic activity we're hoping it's going to stimulate? If we pass it, saying we're not going to increase VAT, we're just going to leave it CIT, what's the plan to plug the revenue deficits? Yes, we say that, there's a lot to be made from, other activities beyond oil and gas. But the reality is, how are you going to collect it? We all know that there's a lot of leakage in terms of collection of revenue. A lot of the companies, or a lot of people who are making we say from a CIT perspective, not all the companies are paying CIT, or not a lot of, revenue earners are paying taxes. All those issues are still there. I don't know, we're speaking to you right now, the revenue deficit that was supposed to have been plugged by the increase in VAT, I don't know how it's going to happen. Hopefully, maybe by the time it goes back to that, when the National Assembly, reconvenes looking at it, they'll probably have some kind of compromise around it. But for now, let's even get to that, promised land and cross it, and get this thing passed. So we're really hopeful that the changes that, that we're hoping to get from the bills that are yet to be passed, that we're able to witness that. So really, we're just hopeful for the best.
I must thank you.
That nothing crops up.
Yes, indeed. It's a nice way to live it. I must thank you so much, Ugochi Ndebio, for your time, Associate Director and Lead Regulatory Business Solutions at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you for your time on the program today. We appreciate this. I know you have other meetings to catch up with, so let me let you go. See you some other time soon.
All right, thanks a lot, Toru. It was my pleasure as well.
All right, then.